Hello, welcome back to Story Molder. Today's story is entitled, Who was Henrietta Lacks in Her Immortal Cells? During Christmas, a woman at the gym shared her excitement about her recent stem cell knee surgery with my daughter and me. Later, this conversation prompted my daughter to mention Henrietta Lacks, a story I had not heard. She told me to research it and share it. Maybe this story will resonate with you as profoundly as it did with me. Believe it or not, I lived in obscurity. I didn't seek international fame. I was born on August 8, 1920 in Roanoke, Virginia, to poor tobacco farmers, a couple of generations removed from slavery. My ancestors lived in the same house that had been their slave quarters for 70 years. I'm Henrietta Lacks, known as Henny. My mother passed away when I was 4 years old during childbirth. My father moved all 10 of us children closer to relatives in Clover, Virginia, for support. We were split among relatives. Some went here, some went there. I went to live with my grandfather, Tommy Lacks, on the family's farm. David Day Lacks, my second cousin, and I grew up together. That 4-room log cabin had been part of the plantation owned by my white great-grandfather. We called it home house. At 14, I had my first son, Lawrence. 4 years later, my daughter Lucille, named Elsie, was born with epilepsy and severe mental disabilities. During those times, it wasn't unusual to marry a second cousin. They and I married and moved to Turner Station, Maryland, near Baltimore. At that time, it was a small African-American community near the steel plant where many of us worked during the 1940s war. Baltimore was different from the dusty roads of Clover, Virginia. All along that dusty road in Clover belonged a family. We called it Lackstown. The stars and the moon lit up the night. We drew water from the creek. Family was all around. Baltimore felt more isolated and confined compared to Clover. I missed the open spaces and my family. Moving to the city changed me. I often went dancing at nightclubs. I enjoyed listening to Billie Holiday and Cab Calloway. And I liked drinking vodka and orange juice. In Maryland, I had 3 more children, bringing my family to 5. Shortly after my 4th child was born, I felt a pain in my womb and thought something was wrong. I confided in my cousin and friends, and they told me, girl, you need to check that out. I didn't trust doctors and hated going to the segregated ward at Johns Hopkins. Many black people distrusted and feared Johns Hopkins because of its racial history. Rumors warned, don't walk near Johns Hopkins at night. You might get abducted and used for medical experiments. As a result, African Americans preferred to go to the city hospital. Had a little more than a 6th grade education, but the doctor's big medical words sounded like gibberish to me. They might as well have been speaking a different language. I didn't follow up on my pain until after Joe, my 5th child, was born. One day, I wasn't feeling well. Did a self-examination and found a knot near my cervix. On February 1st, 1951, I went to Johns Hopkins segregated ward complaining of a painful knot in my cervix and unusual vaginal bleeding. At that time, Johns Hopkins was one of the few hospitals treating poor African Americans. A gynecologist found a small grape-sized tumor on my cervix that went unnoticed during my 5th child's birth. A biopsy confirmed cervical cancer, and the doctor recommended standard radium implants to shrink it. The radium tube was sewn inside of me, causing painful burning sensation. After that diagnosis, it was hard for me to care for Elsie. It broke my heart to have to put her in that hospital. Soon, my doctor recommended daily x-ray treatments at Johns Hopkins. Up to that point, I hadn't told my my family had cancer. My cousin Margaret lived within walking distance of Johns Hopkins, and after my treatment, I would walk to her house to wait for Dave, my husband, to come by and pick me up after work. Exhausted from the x-rays, when I got to Margaret's house, all I could do was sleep. My stomach was swollen and I was in severe pain. After my radiation treatment ended, my doctor said that I was cancer-free. But on August 8th, a few weeks later, still feeling excruciating pain and seeing no improvement, I went back to Johns Hopkins and insisted on being admitted. The doctors had to take back his earlier misdiagnosis because they found an enormous tumor in my stomach. My appearance changed drastically from vibrant to nearly unrecognizable. Family, cousin, and friends stopped by to check on me. I often talk about how my children were being cared for. On October 4th, 1951, at just 31 years old, Henrietta Lacks succumbed to an aggressive form of cervical cancer. Imagine something small enough to float on a dust particle or a thin strand of hair. The naked eye can't see it. Yet it holds the key to understanding diseases, biology, and genetics. That's the immortal HeLa cells. While Henrietta Lacks was under anesthesia and without her knowledge, doctors removed cells from her body for research. The tumor looked unique. It was dark, purple, shiny, jelly-like mass, unlike anything they had seen. They sent the cell to Johns Hopkins Tissue Lab. For years, researchers looked for cells that would survive outside the body for longer studies. By harvesting Henrietta Lacks cells, scientists discovered a line of human cells that can grow indefinitely, known as HeLa. It is named after the first two letters of Henrietta's first and last name. Henrietta Lacks passed away, but a part of her continues to live on through these cells. Most samples died quickly once removed from the patient. But Henrietta's cells survived and doubled every 20 to 24 hours. It was astonishing that they kept dividing and dividing and dividing and thriving. This was a scientific breakthrough. Scientists worldwide started using HeLa cells, sometimes ethically, sometimes not, often without consent. They studied how they function, learned how diseases develop, and tested new treatments without putting the patient at risk. Thanks to HeLa, now we know that HPV can cause cervical cancer, and a vaccine exists. We also know that these cells help develop the polio, measles, and mumps vaccine, and they contributed to research on HIV and COVID-19. We even know that they were sent to space to study the effects of zero gravity. HeLa cells are vital in genetic research. They can survive on surfaces, infect other cells, and spread quickly like kudzu. While Henrietta's cells were transforming medicine, her family was kept in the dark about their existence. No one knew anything. They kept living their life in poverty, while for decades, scientists profited from her biological materials, using HeLa cells to build careers, test theories, and generate profits from the sale of her cells. At the same time, they kept her identity secret. Historians and journalists questioning uncovered the true source of the cells. Do they belong to Henrietta Lacks, they asked, Helen Lane, or someone else? In 2010, with Henrietta's daughter's help, Rebecca Skloot revealed the identity of HeLa cells in her book, Henrietta Lacks, Immortal Cells. The family was confused and concerned, wondering why their cells were taken without permission and how they could still be alive after her death. Deborah, Henrietta's daughter, questioned whether scientists had cloned or killed their mother to harvest her cells. cells. She said if my mother was so important to medicine, why were her children struggling to afford health insurance? Their pain and Henrietta's story highlight the broader historical truth that scientists have frequently depended on the bodies of the marginalized people. Her story has sparked debate about medical ethics, patient rights, and informed consent. Those HeLa cells are still growing today. 6 trillion immortal cells are reproduced weekly, like superheroes, bionic beings, or blobs. Henrietta Lacks is commemorated with a best-selling book, an Oprah-produced movie, and a foundation. 2 of her family members are serving on the oversight committee. In a humble family cemetery in Clover, Southern Virginia, off a country road and beneath an old oak tree, lies a woman who lived a brief and unremarkable life, buried beside her mother, Eliza. Henrietta Lacks' unintended legacy lives on through HeLa cells, which continues to heal and save millions of lives. Given the gift of life is the greatest gift. She is among the most important women in the history of medical research, believe it or not. Thank you for stopping by and listening to another one of my stories. Come back as often as you like. I'll be happy to have you. Goodbye for now.